Oops. Okay, first thing before we start is just an announcement because I know I'm going to forget this later on. So today is the 15th, okay? Next Thursday, the 22nd, I'm actually not going to give shiur because I have a YBT Sunday shiur that I'm going to give that I'd like to spend this time preparing for. But instead, Jessie Fishbein is going to be giving shiur during this time. I'll send out the information in the next email, and her shiur is going to be on the Yamim Noraim. So for those who want a shiur during that time, then I highly recommend going to Jessie's shiur. Okay, and then we have the 29th, which is so I think the 28th is Tzom Gedalia, so 29th is the day after Tzom Gedalia. Shiur should be fine then. And then the 6th is the day after Yom Kippur, and I'm scheduled to fly back to Seattle that night. So unless something goes horribly wrong and like I get stranded in New York, then we probably will not resume shiur until after Sukkot. Okay, so we have, just to summarize, next week, Jessie Fishbein. The week after that, I'll give shiur, and then we're on break until after Sukkot. Okay, that'll be the plan. Okay, so in terms of the plan for today, I would like to finish our analysis of the Mishnah today. Our plan is going to be like this. We're going to start off by reviewing what we did last time, the Mishnah and the questions. Then we'll open the floor in case anyone has any ideas. Then I basically was going through the Mefarshim, and I kind of honed in on okay, the Rambam gives an approach which is echoed by two other Mefarshim. And that was the first thing that I saw that had promise. So I looked at that, learned it, got some ideas, but didn't like fully bring it home. Okay. And then I found the Sforno, and I feel like the Sforno gave me a complete idea, but now I don't know if that's also what the Rambam and crew were getting at. So I kind of want to like treat those as tentatively two approaches, Rambam and crew, and then Sforno. I think we're definitely going to get an idea from the Sforno, but I'd like to see if we could either show how the Rambam and crew fit in, or like get an idea from the Rambam. And then if we have time, then there are a couple other side points that I want to make. We'll see where we're at that point. Okay. All right. So let's review a caveat. And again, if you weren't here last time, I think everyone was here last time. If you weren't here last time, or even if you were, you can feel free to interrupt with questions, even on the stuff we're reviewing. Okay. A caveat ben Mahalala Omer. A caveat ben Mahalala says, contemplate three things and you will not come to transgression. Know where you came from, where you're going, and before whom you will ultimately be given judgment and reckoning. Okay, or give judgment and reckoning. So that's what you should know. But then it spells it out. Me'ayin basa, where did you come from? Mitipas rucha, from a putrid drop of semen. Ul'anata holech, where are you going? Limkom afar rima v'solea, to a place of dirt, maggots, and worms. Lifnei mi'ata asi lidin din v'cheshbon, before whom we will be given judgment and reckoning. Lifnei melech malchim lachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, before the king of kings, the king of kings, the transcendent one, who is the source of all good. Okay, now new fact. Okay, before we get into our questions, I mentioned last time Avos to Rabbi Nasan. So there is no Gemara in Talmud Bavli on Pirkei Avos. Okay, however, there is this thing called Avos to Rabbi Nasan, which is one of the Masechta Katanas. There are 63 Masechtos of Shas, and then there are these Masechta Katanas, these small Masechtas, which were put together by the Savoraim after the Amoraim, and they are like quasi on the same authority as like Brisas and stuff, and quasi on the authority of Gemaras. All right. I think, sorry, maybe it was actually after the Mishnah. I'm not sure who put them together. So what is contained in Avos to Rabbi Nasan is the closest thing you'll get to Gemara on Avos. And then also, and this is the cool thing, you'll get alternate versions of the teachings in Pirkei Avos. Okay. So this is like, sometimes you have like director's cut or like alternate endings, So I was looking through like right before shiur just to see if there was anything here, and I found an alternate version of our Mishnah. Okay, and it's going to be a small difference, but I feel like there's potential for something, some good nuance here. Okay, so Kavim Malal Omer says, Kol hanosein arba dvarim el libo, anyone who takes four things to heart, shuv eno chote, will no longer sin. Okay, now if we just pause there, by the way, you'll notice there's different words here. Now, what does that tell, just in terms of methodology, what does that tell you about the questions we asked on like, he's talking, okay, no, I'm going to try not to prejudice you. What do you make of the fact that it says our version says he's takel b'shlosh devarim v'i'ata bali de avera, and this one says kol hanosein arba devarim el libo shuv eino chote, and ignore the 4 because that's obviously the big difference. But what do you take? What do you take from the different nuances in wording? Like, what would you do with that information?
I mean, I would think that that would mean that the individual like words aren't that important for the stylistic differences. Yeah, that's what I would think also. Okay, right? Yeah. Now you could say now and this is the weird thing I can't exactly explain, but like if I saw, there are a couple cases in Mishlei, for example, where there are psukim with very similar wording but slight differences. Okay, or there are examples where like you have like the first example that comes to mind is David HaMelech in Tehillim in the first parak of Hallel is very similar to Tfilas Chana. Okay, so in those cases, either in the Shlomo case because it's the same author, or in the case of David where he's clearly referencing something that was known at his time, I feel like there I'd be like, okay, well, why is he changing the wording in subtle ways? But for something like this, to me, it suggests what Yael said, which is like the wording is not so important. Okay, like if we're gonna, in other words, if our idea is going to be like contingent on mistakel, then I think we're missing the mark. And similarly, maybe I just said that in my head because the word chote means miss the mark. But if you're going to make a big deal about chote versus avera, and you're going to make your whole idea contingent on that, I think that's missing the mark. Okay, that's my take on it. You could be one of these people who says like, no, there's a different nuance in every version and like this whole different idea. I'm just not one of those people. Okay, you'd have to like sell me on that. Okay, all right, but now let's get to the main course here. Okay, so anyone who takes 4 things to heart will no longer sin. Me'ain hu ba ul'an hu holech uma asid lihios umihu dayenu. Okay, so where he comes from, where he is going, what he will be in the future, and who is his judge. And I'm going to go ahead, spoiler alert, that's talking about God, so I'm going to capitalize it, okay? Then it explains, Me'ain hu ba, where did he come from? Mimakom choshech, from a dark place. Ul'an holech, and where is he going? Limakom choshech va'afela, to a place of dark, and afela is like deep darkness. Uma asi lios, and where and what will he become? Afar rima v'solea, dirt, worms, and maggots. Umihu dayenu, and who is our judge? Melech malchei melachim hakadosh baruch hu, the king, king of kings, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah. Okay, so slight differences, right? Nothing about the Tipa Sarucha changes the answer of where you're going. You came from darkness and you will go to darkness. Okay, that's a little suggestive of something like that. To me, that's not just like a different wording. That's like a different idea, right? And it's clearly like bracketing it. What will you become? You will become dirt, worms, and maggots. And then the last part seems to be pretty similar to what we had before. Okay, so again, we're learning ours, but you can kind of treat this alternate version as like a פירוש on ours. Okay, so just like keep that in mind. All right. Any questions, just or any other like nuances you see here that you want to like highlight? Okay, so now let's review our questions. Okay, and I just wrote these down, I think, in the order that they were asked, and like ordered them, or did I order them? Let's see. All right, question number 1. The first 2 clauses refer to the body, but the third refers to the soul, right? So you came from a tipa srucha, that's not your soul, that's your body. Where are you going? To a place of dirt, worm, and maggots, that's your body, not your soul. But then the third one refers to the soul. Why not be consistent and focus on the important part, the soul, right? Like, why do we even care about the body? Because the body is not going to last. The soul is going to last forever. And that the soul is going to be judged. The body is not going to be judged. And then, so why not describe the journey of the soul? And why focus on the body if that's not the essence? Okay. Oh, side commercial. Okay. I'm only thinking about this because Yom Kippur is coming up, and I just want to, like, in case you're interested in this kind of thing. So, Sefer Yonah. Okay. Which of you were in my Sefer Yonah class? I can't remember. Anyway,
So people are bothered by this notion of Yonah being swallowed by the fish, right? And like living. So the Mefarshim explained it was a nace, right? Like I don't think that's a big thing. Like I think that's plain shot. So, but I always get someone who asks me, like, is there anyone who takes it as an allegory? Okay. So the answer that I found among the classical commentators is no. Okay. There's some people who want to argue that from the Rambam, from an obscure inference in the Rambam, that the fish part was a prophetic vision. I'm not so sold on that, but I've never seen anyone like outright say there's an allegory. However, I believe the Vilna Gaon, okay, takes the book, he takes it literally, but he also reads the entire Sefer Yonah as an allegorical description of the journey of the soul through this world. Okay, so I was just reminded of that from this question. So if you ever want to like look into that kind of thing, if that's your interest, then you can go there. Okay, anyway, back to our program. Why focus on the part of on the body if it's not the essence? Okay, that was question number 1. 2, what is the implication of tipa srucha? Okay, so our school translates it as putrid drop. I would translate it as a spoiled drop or a rotten drop or a decomposing drop. So the question is putrid just a negative word which is designed to make you go ew, like the worms, maggots, and dirt? Okay, or is srucha a clinical description of the drop, and that's how they thought that, like, conception worked, that it putrefies or it like decomposes, and then that somehow becomes like the person. I think I mentioned this last time, that back in the time of Chazal, Chazal held by spontaneous generation, right? Like they held that like if you have a piece of meat out, they didn't know, so they held, they saw that meat gave rise to maggots, and they thought that the actual meat like transforms into maggots. The inanimate meat becomes maggots. They didn't know that there were microscopic eggs that were hatching that were becoming maggots. So maybe this is just how they thought the conception worked, that the drop like putrefies, then becomes the person. Okay, and either way, like what's the point of tipus ruha? We didn't really ask that, but I guess that's what we asked. Okay. 3, why are the first 2 clauses so negative sounding? What does that teach us? Isn't this degrading Hashem's creation? It leaves you with a disgusting feeling. If that's by design, why cause us to look down on our origin and our destination? Okay. 4 is a main question. How does the contemplation of these 3 things prevent you from sinning? Right, that's the main idea. And according to the alternative version, then how does the place of deep darkness fit in? 5, why state these 3 things and then explain them? Why not just have the second part? In other words, we know mishnayos tend to be very concise, so you could have just said Hisaka b'shlosh devarim iataba alidei avera, and then you could have crossed this out and said, where did you come from? A putrid drop. Where are you going, etc. And you don't need to like restate all these 3 clauses. Okay, so that's a minor question. The second big question is, practically speaking, how do we do this? What does mistakel mean? How does one engage in this histakelus? How often? What context? What effect are these rich descriptions supposed to have on us? And if we don't answer this question, then we have failed. Okay, because the purpose of Pirkei Avos is not just to get ideas; it's to actually transform your behavior and move you on the way to reaching the level of chassidus, of becoming a chassid. So if we don't translate this into practical terms, then we're sunk. And this is slightly different than in Mishlei, because Mishlei, the way we learn it, is it's entirely practical. In Pirkei Avos, there are things that are like not practical. Like if you look at chapter 5, God did 10 miracles in Mitzrayim and 10 at the sea. Right, that's not an idea even about ethics. Question is, what is it doing in Pirkei Avos? Like I don't think you necessarily translate into practicality, but this is definitely supposed to be practical. 7, what is the difference between din and cheshbon? Okay, another question which our alternate version shows us is not so important, right? Because ours, the alternate version just says, who is our judge? 8, in this context, what does avera mean? Is it a halachic violation, bad midos, bad decisions? Again, from our alternate version, we see that it uses the word chet. So if we don't answer this, I'm not going to lose sleep on it. 9, why is God characterized as Melech Malchim Malachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And then 10, I feel like this is also a main question, because this is going to be like a split crossroads. Does this only work if you contemplate all 3 in conjunction with each other, or is each one an avenue of contemplation that can prevent avera? Like, does each one on its own suffice to prevent avera? And then if you get all 3, then you're going to be covering all your bases, or do you need like the combination of all 3 in order to have this effect? Okay, and then I'll just add this here just so we don't forget it, which is what additional insights or what additional / alternative insights do we learn from the Avos de Rebbe Nassan version? Okay, those are our questions. This is our Mishnah. What do you say before we do the Mefarshim? And some of you had approached it last time, so feel free to reiterate it because not everyone was here necessarily.
Yeah, I wasn't here last time actually, and I watched the video, so I think I'm caught up on it. But I was thinking that maybe it's the physical things like coming from a putrid drop and thinking about dying.
Yeah.
Like the desires would come from. Sorry, let me rephrase this.
Sure.
Like hate would be caused by physical desires normally. Yeah. So that could be like, very basic like survival type things.
Yeah.
Which I think would be more covered by the putrid draw part.
Yeah.
And then there's also like ego legacy type desires, which I think would be more covered by the, you're gonna die and get eaten by maggots part.
Yeah.
And then, it kind of reminds you that those desires are like for finite things and you should focus on the more infinite part.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, good. So that's actually going to be exactly walking into my dilemma, which is that the Rambam says a lot of that explicitly. The Sforno says something which to me sounds a lot clearer, and I don't know if those are two different ideas or one, but either way, you're on a good track. Okay, you're either on one of those good tracks or both of those good tracks. But I'm going to push you and say, you don't have to answer this right now, but so that's a great answer to question number 4. How does the contemplation of these things prevent you from sinning? But now when you put it into practical terms, right? Like, let's say, like, I'm about to go and we'll just use a classic analogy, right? Let's say like I'm about to eat a cheeseburger, right? And you say like, remember, you came from a putrid drop, right? Like, does that actually affect the way that I relate to the fact that this is a pleasurable thing that I want right now, And I feel like you could definitely find examples where this happens, right? Like when a person is, I don't know, like a person is about, okay, no spoilers, but I just finished. I don't know if anyone else watches Cobra Kai, but I just finished watching Cobra Kai last night. And there's a lot of talk about legacy, and people have to make decisions. And sometimes people make decisions that are doing bad things in order to ensure their legacy, and so if you catch the person there and you ask them like, are you really going to do this thing that might jeopardize your legacy and like make people remember you as someone who was like this low life criminal? That might actually give a person pause. So I'm not denying that this can work, but the claim being made here, like if on the infomercial of Rakavi and Halala, is if you follow these 3 simple steps, you're gonna stop all sins, So like it's a tall order. That's what I want to know here is like practically how do we extend the truth of what Yael is saying to like the practical to actually impact you?
Can I try to answer that?
Sure, go ahead.
Maybe like when we sin, like if it whatever comes from those desires, but like the reason that's causing us to act and not to like be like, well, we're not going to do that even though we have those desires is because we're thinking about like the moment.
Yeah.
And we're like very much in the moment. But by this saying that, like, remember where you came from and where you're going, it's saying it's like giving you a broader perspective on your life. And like, if you do this right now, then like, you're still going to die. And then like, is it going to really, like, you think it's going to be some benefit now, which is why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And this is saying like, is that benefit actually a benefit if you're just going to die? I guess.
Okay.
So like think of the real benefit.
Okay. So I'm glad you said that because that is on the one hand true, on the other hand problematic. Okay. So there is a question that I actually meant to do this last time, but I forgot. Give me 1 second. Does he say this or am I imagining this? Give me 1 second. No. So now I'm forgetting who said this. I thought it was the Abravanel. Okay. But I can't remember who said it now. So there is another question which is like this. Okay. So who is to say that thinking about your death will make you refrain from giving in to desire? Okay. What if it propels you towards desire? Okay. Anyone know the famous line that is like quoted that like uses an argument about from the fact that you're going to die, that therefore you should indulge?
YOLO.
YOLO.
Okay, YOLO is the modern version of it. Okay. Right. So like the older version, which is quoted, I don't know where the quote in English comes from, but the Navi has one that's very similar, is eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Okay, or modern version YOLO, right? So there are things where a person says like, since I'm only going to live once, like, and this pleasure is here, I might as well enjoy it, right? So I think that is a question that is fairly easy to answer, but it's just a question that like I think we need to answer it in order to like clarify what this is. You have Vanessa?
I want to like push back on the question. Maybe we're not supposed to be thinking about death per se, but literally like maybe this also answers the question of why we have the weird language that this mishnah has. Yeah. Like why, like when you brought up the cheeseburger example, like maybe you're supposed to be thinking just about like the physical part of it, and it's not even really about the death. It's like your body is going to get eaten by maggots, but like you don't necessarily die, like, right? Like have a distinction between the shama and the goof.
Right.
So maybe that's the answer. Like maybe it's not thinking about death that's supposed to be. And I think this was my question from last week. Like, doesn't this depress you? Maybe it's not depressing because you're not thinking about death per se, but the fact that like you're not a body. Your body is separate. Okay. Your body is this thing that's going to rot and get eaten by maggots. Yeah. But you're actually fine. So like the cheeseburger is not enticing because you're a neshama.
Right.
What's it going to do for you? A cheeseburger is going to make your neshama feel like awful, and your body's just like going to get eaten by maggots no matter what you feed it. Right. So like, why would you feed it something unholy?
Okay, so I'm going to push back on that. I think you're right, and that's going to be very central to the Sforno. But I'm going to push back on that also. Is cheeseburgers taste good? So like, okay, fine. So my body's going to go away, but like it's pleasurable. So and pleasure feels good, right? And the reason why I'm asking this is like this is, you know, right now we're in the safe environment of like Torah in front of us and no cheeseburgers, right? But like we know that cheeseburgers taste good. Well, maybe you don't know. I know cheeseburgers taste good because I was a non-Jew, right? Okay. So like, but when you're confronted with whatever type it is, like it's really good, you know, like it feels good. So like you need to be, in others like this, you need to be able. Okay, in order for this to work, I'm gonna pull a leaf from Sadigon on Mishlei. In fact, I'm gonna actually pull up Sadigon on Mishlei. Hold on just a second. That is not typing there. Sadia Gaon on Mishlei. And I thank you for your patience, Alex and Rifki. Going to take a little while. Oh, my computer's slowing down again. Low system resources may affect your audio quality. Okay, someone tell me if like I end up like cutting out or like getting all weird audio. So in the Hagdama of Sadigon on Mishlei, which is the basis for how I learn Mishlei, he says about how you should deal with your emotions. Give me 1 second. I did not plan that I was going to do this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, here we go. So he says, so he's talking about how to talk to the masses. Okay, like average people. Okay, which we should include ourselves in this because we're not so developed yet. Okay, so he says the masses, ordinary people, since the knowledge of the senses, meaning like experience, is krova v'kala is like more accessible and easier than Yedias HaSeichel, than intellectual knowledge, abstract knowledge, because we have our sensory faculties from the time we're born. Therefore, it's necessary to come up with mashalim, with either metaphors or examples, to equate in their eyes, in the eyes of the average people, the obligations of the intellect with the obligations of the senses. Okay, Bir Hadavar, the explanation is as follows. Shachush, the senses, okay, and think about this as your body, okay, Kasher roa eish, when you see fire, so any living creature will flee from fire out of fear that it'll get burned. So too, if you hear a loud, frightening sound, yivrach mimenu ba'ofen tivi, you will recoil from it, you'll flee from it in an instinctual manner. Because these things are sensory, okay? They're very close to your senses. Therefore, when the intellect sees something which is destructive, or hears something that is harmful, and your intellect tells your teva, here teva means your instinctual animalistic nature, your emotions, your psyche, your personality, and your intellect sees that your psyche is not relying on the words of your intellect, and doesn't accept it. Medaber imu ba'ofen shiavin. So then your intellect has to speak with your emotions in a way that your emotions will understand. The omerlo, and it should say to your emotions, sim leiv, pay attention. This thing that I'm telling you, it's like the fire that you flee from when you see it. And it's like a deep deep waters that you instinctually guard against. This is the benefit of metaphors and examples. To bring close to the instinctual nature, to your emotions, the definitiveness of the intellect. And to say to your emotions, this thing is like the thing that you experience with your senses. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? Because intellectually, the points you guys are making are true, right? We know that the body is temporary and is not really you, and we know that the intellect, the soul, is the part that lasts forever, and therefore, like, the cheeseburger is not worth it, right? But the problem is, how do you convey that to the emotions, right? How do you speak that idea to the emotions in a way that they will hear and respond? And clearly, Kavya Halal is trying to do that. He's speaking in emotionally charged terms, and that's exactly what I want to understand is what happens to your emotions to make them go from like the Looney Tunes, like salivating tongue, googly eye thing looking at the cheeseburger, to like, oh, like I came from a putrid drop and I'm going to a place of dirt, worm, and maggots. Like, how does that transformation in the emotions take place? You're doing a good, all of you are doing a good job of explaining intellectually how this works. But the question is, how does it actually affect you? Okay, Alex, you load your hand. Does that mean that you no longer have a question or?
I mostly forgot what I was going to say, but then also what you just said now kind of like touched on what I was thinking about generally. So I was like, it's good.
Okay, all right. If you remember, then go ahead and raise your hand again. Yeah, Rifki.
So I was actually going to respond to what Vanessa was saying before, about like the whole body situation and like really not focusing on it as much.
Yeah.
So I was actually going to say kind of the opposite. Like, I think that, at least from my perspective of the Mishnah, that like it's a very obviously, like, it's one of the main things in the Mishnah. So I would say that how I was thinking about it was that you should recognize that you are a body. Like, I think that obviously it's very important to recognize that at the end of the day, like, you do have a neshama and you're not just a body. But I think, at least for me, like, almost only thinking about the neshama or like focusing on it more necessarily than the body, I don't know if it would be like such a like necessarily the best way to avoid doing these things. Yeah. And I was going to say, in accordance with that I think the reason why it ends with speaking about Hashem judging us is also because I was thinking about it. It's very funny, but almost like a chavrusa. Like, I think like having a chavrusa is like holding you accountable. Yeah. And I think like Hashem is obviously the best chavrusa to have. Obviously. So like, obviously. So I think like by like knowing that like you are being held accountable by him, and also recognizing that you are a body and a neshama, and just trying to piece all those things together and really think about it, I think like it could like affect your emotions, but I'm not sure how you would get to what you were saying.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, and I am going to disagree. But you also raise a valid question, which is, and this is a side question, okay, and it's only a side question because I'm me, which is that Mishlei does seem to take a different approach, right? Mishlei takes the approach of like encouraging you to go after your bodily desires, but to do so through chachma, right? This is much more like a Koheles type approach, which is like, if you go after that, then you're just going to die anyway, So like, it would be nice to like, so in other words, even though I'm disagreeing with you, I'm going to disagree with you, Rifki, on this Mishnah. based on the Sforno and Vanessa. You'll see in a second. But I do think that what you're saying is true and is more similar to the derech of Mishlei. And it'd be nice if we could like flesh out the those two what do you call it, approaches. Okay, so like, you know, partially put you on okay, we're gonna put your idea on the back burner and we're gonna burn half of it and then try to cook a dish out of the other half. Okay. All right. Yeah, Dina.
So this might be a little far-fetched, but I'm rereading the where did you come from, like the future drop thing. Just because of the ending of this, before the King of Kings, the transcendent one, I'm thinking that maybe the feeling is humility.
Okay.
Because it's like, I'm coming from nothing, I'm going to nothing, and before God, the transcendent one, the source of all good, like this is like a humility thing. Like I feel like Moshe like would like go down on his knees and say, I'm nothing, but you are everything, God. Like I feel like this is just humility. Good
vibe you're picking up on. So the Mefarshim are going to say that, but I want to ask a question from the Abravanel, which is going to push us to answer it in a more clear way. Okay, so this is a question on what you're saying. Okay, before we see the Mefarshim say it. So the Abravanel says like this. Here, Hash'ela HaRavis. Okay, so the fourth question, he asked 6 questions. Okay, the fourth question. So what is the argument to distance a person from haughtiness? So he's agreeing with you and using that as the basis of his question, that saying that you came from a future drop is distancing you from haughtiness. Okay, and last year's shiur we said that thinking that you're going to go to a place of worms and maggots also is distancing you from haughtiness. Okay, so both of them do that. But he's focusing on the drop. Okay, everyone came from a future drop. Okay, why doesn't the person say, well, you came from a future drop and so did I, but look what I made of myself. Like I became rich and famous and you're just like working in McDonald's flipping cheeseburgers that you can't eat. We have the same origin and one fate that's going to happen to us, but I made more of myself. If the point of this is to distance you from avera and gaiva and haughtiness, it would be enough to remind him where he's going. Yusru mimeno hagaivos v'haveros kulam ukamamar hapaitan ve'echa ma'ale rima avakesh umachartie rima achosi. Okay, so he says, in other words, all you need to do is just mention that you're going to die, and that should be enough to remove gaiva and averos. You don't need the part about tipa srucha. And then he quotes a poet. Who is this poet? It doesn't say. This is on Shachris of Yom Kippurim. So I think I'm translating this correct. How can I, the one who will bring up maggots, make a request? And tomorrow the worm will be my sister. Okay, I'll be like friends with the worms. Okay, so I am agreeing with you, Dina, and I think that, and the Mefarshim are going to agree with you. But think about this question, which is like, because in other words, like this, I would like to take your approach, which is thinking about coming from a tipa srucha and going to a place of dirt, worm, and maggots. Both of them break haughtiness. Abravanel saying, I see how dying is going to break haughtiness, but saying I came from a tipa srucha could increase haughtiness. Okay. Yeah, Vanessa?
I don't know if I'm getting off topic at this point. I think there is a synthesis. Like, I don't want to harp on the cheeseburger example. I know it was just like a silly example that's like a catch-all, but like that's like why we have Beyond Burgers, right? Like you're allowed to satiate the physical desire while still like maintaining the halakha. Like that's, I don't know, that's like how I take my approach as a Jew. Like your job is to like, you're in a physical body. You're not supposed to neglect yourself. Like we're not taking a Buddhist approach. We're not Buddhists. Like we're not supposed to nullify the body. We're supposed to synthesize our neshama and like elevate it. Like we're here on a physical earth to elevate it. Like that's the whole point.
Yeah. Okay, so you are bringing up a valid point, which is that there and there are statements of Chazal, I just don't know where they are right now. I can't find them really quickly. That like, well, okay, there's definitely a thing that Judaism is not an ascetic religion, right? Like you're saying, we're not here to deny ourselves of pleasures. In fact, I just I made a really good dinner and dessert tonight, and like started a new chat with some of the other my other students who were like doing food stuff, and I was saying like my Rebbe Rabbi Moskowitz would always remind us that like you should enjoy both worlds, and Rabbi Moskowitz would always quote a Yerushalmi, which I also don't know where it is, that says like anyone who had a permissible pleasure that they could partake of without like not in a harmful way, and if they didn't do it, then they're going to get punished on that when they when they die. Like to not take advantage of the enjoyments of the world is like a distorted way of viewing things, and what Vanessa is also saying is like there are permissible ways to have everything. The question I have, and this is a minor question, this is not a major question, is that really true? Like, can you really get like I love Beyond Burgers. I have them in my refrigerator right now, but it's not the same as a cheeseburger. And like, I'm thinking of a pasuk in Mishlei which says stolen waters are sweet and bread eaten in secret places is like pleasant, and there's this like, there is a pleasure in partaking of something that is usser because it's usser, now I had a debate with someone in Seattle. We went to one of the Amazon Fresh or Amazon Go stores where like you walk in and like you scan your palm and then you could just take whatever you want and like just walk out and like it charges you automatically. And we were discussing like, would a kleptomaniac get pleasure out of that because it allows them to like indulge in that pleasure, or would they know that this is not actually stealing, so like they wouldn't get the pleasure out of it, so like that's like a minor point to debate, is like, can you really satisfy like all of the like I would challenge you to say that you can get the pleasure of worshiping avodah zarah in a mutter way. I don't think that that's possible.
I don't think it's possible, but I think that's the whole point of this mishnah. I think that's what the point is. I think that when you think of like, oh wow, I'm going to turn into this like maggot-ridden corpse eventually, like that decreases the pleasure of like, oh, what am I actually getting out of this? And like, I'm not in a position where I can actually have a cheeseburger, but I have my own affair to like work through, and like, am I actually gonna care? Like for me, it's news. Like I used to wear shorts all the time. Like my legs are gonna be ridden with maggots all the time. Will I really care about the fact that like for 5 years they were like on this? Like, no, they really wouldn't. Like it really does take that pleasure away in a sense.
Okay, good. So you're starting to answer the question of how to affect the emotions. I would really like it if we could. I think, okay, I don't know about all of us, but I do think that that we all can tap into examples where we've used this kind of thinking. And what I would really like to do is like try to universalize it and to explain how it works in a way that makes it more usable, like let's say your example that you said about like dressing in a non-serious way. So it's great that worked for you, but I guarantee you that there will be other like people who you tell that to and they're like, that does nothing for me, so and maybe it won't do anything for them, but again, Akavi Ben Mahalala is making like this really like big money back guarantee claim that he says you will not come to Avera, and I want to try to take that as far as it can go. Okay, so if we can like unpack it more, I'm not disputing anything you say right now. I think that it's great that we're on that track. Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah, I'm wondering about like maybe like following up what a lot of people are saying about the contrast between, let's say, the guf and then let's say like our tzelem elokim.
Yeah.
And maybe thinking about how we came from a drop and we're going to death, kind of like puts down, like it makes us focus on what's actually real. Like we think our body is so real and we're reality, but then really like we're going in front of Hashem. Our tzelem elokim is what's really eternal, not necessarily us satisfying our desires. So I'm wondering like about sin, like sometimes with emotions, if you're very angry at someone or jealous, once you call out the emotion, then it helps you calm down. It helps you realize I'm not really living in reality right now. I'm being swayed by this emotion. So I'm wondering if it's similar when it comes to sinning.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so and then that also connects what Ayala was saying about like it brings you into a more like a bird's eye, big picture view of your entire life. So here's what I want to do, okay? Because so many of you are getting so many aspects of what the Mefarshim are saying, and because it's 8:40, let's now look at the Mefarshim that I had set aside, okay? And then after we do the Mefarshim, let's use them to try to develop the insights we have. Okay. And whether we end up figuring out the Sforno and making that into the Iker and like borrowing pieces of everyone else, or finding others, like we'll see where it goes. Okay. Like all I care about is like getting good ideas. Okay. We don't really care where they come from. All right. So again, Rambam, here's what we're gonna do. Rambam, Ovadim Bartenura, and Rabbeinu Bachya all say basically the same thing, but with different nuances. And then Sforno says like a different approach, which I think is the most the closest to what most of you have said. Okay, so let's just do this here. Okay, Rambam says, this contemplation, mivia es adam lide anava, brings a person to humility, when he thinks about where he came from. Okay, so he's saying that the tipas rucha will bring you to humility. Okay, he's bonan al tachliso, and contemplation of his end, yavi oso lide zilzu b'inyan ha'olam hazeh, will bring him to have contempt for worldly matters. V'hisbonus b'gdulas hamatzaveh, and contemplation of the greatness of the commander. Okay, which, by the way, I saw someone translate the Rambam and they mistranslated it as Gedulas HaMitzvah. Okay, it's mitzaveh. Okay, Yavi oso lamaher l'kai mitzvah, so will bring him to hasten to fulfill his command. Okay, v'kasher yusagu shloshes hadvarim halalu, once a person attains these three things, lo yechdal, he will not sin at all. Okay, so again, three things. Where you came from, tipas rucha, counteracts gaiva and brings humility. Thinking about where you're going counteracts taiva for worldly things, and brings you to like contempt or rejection of worldly things. And just to comment on what Vanessa said, I don't think he means like you renounce all worldly possessions and become like a monk. He means like unhealthy attachment to worldly things. And contemplating the greatness of God is like what Dina was saying, of it causes you to realize like the greatness of God and the superiority of him vis-a-vis you, and you're just a creation, and like you hasten to fulfill his will. Okay, so that's like a nice clean commentary here. Okay, Lauren, do you still have a question, or is that leftover hand from last time? Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Okay, I just didn't want to miss a question. Okay, so pause that. Ovadi Bartenura is going to answer now our clinical question, or our tipas rucha question. Okay, so he's going to explain it in clinical terms and then show how that's not what why Chazal were using it. Okay, so he says tipas rucha, a putrid drop, okay, equals tipas shechva zera, okay, a drop of semen. Okay, the alpha p shebeshasa ibor enas rucha, even though at the time of pregnancy the drop is not putrid. Okay, let's use spoiled. Okay, I think that's going to work out better. Spoiled. Okay, because it doesn't spoil in the womb of the woman until after 3 days. And once it spoils, it's not fit for conception. Okay. So in other words, he's saying this can't mean that you came from a tipas rucha, because tipas ruchas cannot lead to pregnancies. Okay, again, just accept whatever their science is. Okay, whatever that is. Mikol makom, nevertheless, kari la tipas rucha, he called it a spoiled drop. Mipnei shehi krov el hasriach, because it's on the verge of spoiling. Okay, miyad kashi chus l'me'eh ha'isha, immediately once it leaves the womb of the woman. Okay, and one who contemplates that he came from a spoiled drop, will be saved from haughtiness. Because the same thing as Rambam, but he's saying the reverse. And one who contemplates that he will go to a place of dirt, worms, and maggots. Nitel min hataiva, will be saved from desire, let's say lust, v'hachemda alamamon, and clamoring after money. Okay, v'hamistako sha'asili din cheshbon, and one who contemplates that he will give judgment and reckoning, porish min hachet, will separate from sin, ve'eno nichshal ba'avera, and will not stumble in transgression. You know what's funny? I don't know why he does this. It is funny how he reverses all of the Rambam's things. The Rambam states the first one in the positive, anava, and then he states it in the negative, distancing you from haughtiness. Rambam states the second one in contempt for worldly matters, and then he says saved from lust. I guess it's the same thing. Okay, never mind. Not a big thing, but I think they are saying the same thing. Okay, and then I'm not even going to write down Rabbeinu Bachya. I'm just going to read it because it's pretty much the same. But he's a little bit more poetic. You should know that the success of the soul in meriting the world to come is on account of three things. So Elohim, and these are they: Haughtiness, submissiveness of the heart; ubizui kinyan ha'olam, contempt for worldly possessions; and fear of God. That's why it says first, know where you came from. So thinking about where your beginning was, where you came from, the and how you were created, will give you submissiveness of the heart. And by the way, I think is referring to like the type of thinking that Avodim Bartenura is saying. Like, in other words, you shouldn't just think that you came from a putrid drop. You should like go through the process in your mind about like what had to happen for you to come into existence, right? Like how the whole reproductive system works and like what the odds are and all this other stuff. Okay. So that'll give you submissiveness. Because then your uncircumcised heart will become submissive and you'll be low spirited. Where are you going? Your thought of your end, that you're destined for the grave, and you will decompose in the dirt. And those who terrify you will wake up. That's a reference from Habakkuk. Apparently, I had to look it up. To like maggots are like the ones who like terrify you, I guess. Oh, he says, these are the worms for whom you will be food. This will cause you to have contempt for the worldly possessions and treat them as hevel, and not make them the main thing. And that's also a good thing, by the way, that to refute the notion that we're talking about asceticism. You can have worldly possessions, just don't make them the ikar. When you think about the exaltedness of the king, who's greater than all the kings. Okay, this is like what Dina was saying, and explains also why he's saying Melech Machem Lachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and not just like Dayan HaEmes. We're emphasizing God's his high status, his high rank. Asher biado pelas umosne mishpat, in whose hands are the scales of justice, lishkol zechuyos of chavosav, who will weigh your merits and demerits. And you have to give a reckoning before him. This will give you fear of God. Okay, and we have to remember, by the way, I don't think we brought this up last time. When we think of kings, we think of like Queen Elizabeth II, right? Like royalty, like sitting in the throne and being all fancy. We don't remember that kings were the ones who did judgment. And in Judaism also, right? The king can do judgment, but in the olden days also, like a king could just pronounce din, boom, and like no court, no trials, whatever. So that's the that's the imagery here, why it associates it with the judgment. Okay, so we see how all these three things kind of like overlap. Okay, hold on for 1 second. Now the Sforno, and I said I think Sforno is the best of these in terms of like getting ideas. And this is going to be most directly relevant to what Vanessa said, okay, but also like what Lauren and Ayala said, what a lot of people said here. It is appropriate for you to contemplate the beginning of your existence and your end, okay, and its end, okay. Im kafia chelak hagashmi, whether from the standpoint of your physical component, or from the standpoint, and from the standpoint of your intellectual component. Behold, the beginning and end of your physical component is something temporary, nifsad, or like nifsad means it's like perishable, okay? Perishable, v'nimas, and disgusting. L'chein, therefore, ein roy laharbos hishtadlus binyanav. It is not proper to exert tremendous effort in its affairs. Omnam, however, mitzius hachelak hasichli, the existence of your intellectual component. Behold, I know it's not fashionable to translate behold, but I like saying behold with exclamation. Yetiv yera inyano kafi hishtadluscha bo. You can improve it or harm it based on your effort with it. Asher yetze mishpato milifnei hamelach hakadosh. And its judgment will come forth from the holy, the transcendent king. Okay, that's Sforno. Okay, so let's, keeping the other mafarshim in mind, okay, what is Sforno saying? And again, you can, if you feel like you're repeating ideas from before, that's fine. Let's just see it in the Sforno though. So what is Sforno saying? Let's try to answer our question number 4. How does contemplation of these things prevent you from sinning? Let's hold off on 6 because we have to get the 4 clear first. And then let's also answer number 10. Does this only work if you contemplate all 3 in conjunction with each other? So what is the Sforno saying? Anyone want to say?
Specifically only Sforno?
You can bring in other elements also if you want, but I kind of want to focus on the Sforno because I think it's the closest to what we've been doing.
It kind of seems like he's appealing to the desires in a way. Like you could build a legacy, but only with the seichel part.
Okay, good. So
focus on that.
Great way to say that. Okay, good. So one thing he's saying, okay, so the first way that the Sforno struck me is he's basically saying like this, okay? You have a certain amount to invest, okay? And the investment is your life and your energy, right? Like he says hishtadlus, like your strivings, right? So what are you going to invest it in? Okay, you could invest it in something which is perishable and disgusting, okay? Or you could invest it in something which is eternal, which you can actually improve and which you'll actually get results from God, okay, be judged on, right? So what's the smart investment? Okay, and I like the way that Yael is answering it because Yael is answering also partially our 6th question, okay, which is that this is appealing to the emotions because it's saying like, look, I want something that is going to like be worthwhile and to last. And there's only one thing that fits the bill, which is my intellectual, my intellect, right? My soul, because that's the only thing that's going to last. So it does appeal to that thing of like, do you really want to be, putting all of your effort into like this perishable thing? Like what it reminds me of, who was I talking to? I was talking to someone and the question was posed to them that the difference between their second child getting married and their first child getting married. And they were saying how like the first wedding is much, much more stressful. And then the second child, you realize like, does it really pay to like get so caught up in all the little details of this thing? Like that's going to be over. Like the wedding itself is going to be enjoyable. And like, I'm not going to remember whether like the flowers on the tables were like turned this way or turned that way. So it's like, not really like, it's not worth getting caught up in, it's not a good return on your investment. Okay. So I think that's a good way to say it. Okay. Anyone else see anything from the Sforno? Yeah. Rivki?
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say that I like at the end, like this is basically like very similar to what you were just saying, but how he says like you can improve or harm it based on your effort with it, meaning like it's very much like you really can go either way and it's really up to you because we really do have the option. And I think like people like knowing that they have that bechira. I mean, we don't like it when it's like a hard decision, but I think like just intellectually, it's nice to know that you really can go either way and like recognizing that it's not, again, just a neshama and not just a body, and that it's a combination of the two, and that if you use it, both of them in the right way or in the wrong way, it really just depends.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really good. And I just want to highlight something in that also, which is that he's saying you can improve or harm your intellect, right? So can't you also do the same thing for your body? Someone answer that question.
But either way.
Sorry, say it again. Someone? I didn't hear it talk.
You can improve or make it worse.
But it doesn't matter because you're going to get eaten by maggots.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's the thing, is you can make temporary improvements in it, but you cannot stop the aging process and the maggot devouring process, right? In other words, like your intellect, if you don't develop your intellect, it will remain where it is or get worse. And if you improve your intellect, then we hold, again, this is a yesod of Torah, we hold that your knowledge goes with you into Olam Haba, and that's going to last forever. So you can make permanent improvements. With the body, first of all, you can't choose your genetics, right? Certain people are just like born to be taller than others, or shorter, or like have different weight, like body types or different complexions, and like you can like mask it and like wear shoes that make you taller or whatever, but at the end of the day, you can't stop the aging process. You can't determine your genetics, and we all have the same fate, so you can't really improve it. Yeah. So I think that complements the point that Rivka is making really well. Yeah, Vanessa?
I think that I don't know if we're ready to move on to number 6, but I think this conversation is helping me understand this.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, move on to number 6. I think
that Sforno makes I don't know if he's making an assumption, but I think he makes something really explicit that I don't think we made explicit before, that and just getting all the other commentaries, and I'm thinking out loud, so if this doesn't make sense, I apologize.
Fine, yeah.
He separates, he's saying two processes are happening at the same time here. We're supposed to think about the beginning and the end of our physical and our intellectual thing. And those are happening simultaneously, but also separately.
Yeah.
And it was the Bartenura who was giving the clinical description, right?
The Bartenura.
It was the Bartenura, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I liked about the description is we're not just talking about how we started me'ayin, we started from nothing. I think what his description of the putrid drop is the introduction of mortality.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to go progression. First you start and you're thinking, oh, we're a mortal thing. We're going to spoil. Whether it's going to happen during conception or if it's going to happen 80 years from now.
Yeah.
You don't know. That just starts you on to, that's what starts the process. You have to think about, okay, my time here is finite and I need to think about long-term consequences and what's going to happen after.
Yeah.
That starts you on ball. Then the second thing is, okay, what happens when I die? Physically, I'm just going to rot and decompose.
Yeah.
And my neshama is going to go up to Hashem and then you move on to the third thing, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to deal with us, reckon with us, however that happens. Right. I think that progression actually, I think the way this Sforno sets all this all up in conjunction with everything else, just I don't know, I like it. It's a flow.
It's really good, right? It's really good. Hopefully you'll remember what you're going to say. I just want to add a few points to what Vanessa was saying. Is that so starting with the Bartenura, I think that's a great way to say it. I didn't think of it in those terms, that it is introducing the idea of mortality from the get-go. The first thing is you almost didn't exist, right? And I think we have a greater understanding, because I think they held that the semen itself turns into the combining with the semen from the man and I think they held it was the blood of the woman that becomes the person. We though know that there are I forgot I don't know, was it millions of sperm, right? In I forgot how many sperm, right? But almost all of them die, right? And sometimes it takes couples many tries for infertility to happen, and you might feel my existence is intrinsic, I am special, but no, you were one of the result of one little freak event that could have not happened, and that if the conditions weren't right, you would have just perished. Don't call yourself special. And just to highlight how the insanity of the other perspective, Rabbi Chait gave a shiur once, and I can't remember what shiur it was. I wish I knew, because I wanted to go back to listen to it. And he brought in something that I would be shocked if any of us have learned. Yechezkel 29:3. Okay, because we all learn Yechezkel. Daber ve'amarta ko amar ad Hashem Elokim go and say, Thus said Hashem Elokim, Hineni alecha Paro melech Mitzrayim. Behold, I am against you, Paro melech Mitzrayim. Now, this is not Paro in Yetzias Mitzrayim. This is Paro at the time of Yechezkel. Hatanim Hagadol, the great serpent, Harovitz Pesok Yorav, who crouches in his rivers, Asher Amar, who said, now here's the statement, Li Yoori va'ani asisini. The river is mine and I made myself. So what does that mean? So Mesilas David gives a nice shot as he does. Li Yoori, the river is mine. Hayor, this is the Nile. Hu li lahashko sadosai ve'en li tzorech b'mat harashmayim. The river is mine to water my fields, and I don't need the rains of heaven. So this is a very arrogant statement, because remember, all of the sustenance in Egypt comes from the Nile. So someone who is Jewish would recognize, oh, and the Nile comes from Hashem, like everything does. And Hashem is the one who makes everything grow and provides our sustenance. But Paro is saying, no, the river is mine and it's watering my fields and I don't need God. And then he goes one step worse. Va'ani asisini, and I made myself. Okay. Ani gadalti v'romamti. I made myself great and made myself exalted as Asmi, myself. The chachmasi uvapol yadi, with my wisdom and the might of my hand and my hand. So this is like what it says in Parshas Akev. Kochi v'otim yadi asali asachayil hazeh. My might and the strength of my own hand made me this wealth. But it's going one step further. I made myself. And I remember Rabbi Chait saying, like, the Russia believes that he is a self-made man. I am somehow responsible for my own existence, or Rabbi Sachs, not Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, but my Rabbi Sachs, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs from Yeshiva, said, the Rambam's opening halacha is, Yesod ha-Yesodos v'Chachmas Leida sheisham matzoi rishon. The foundation of the pillar of wisdom is to know that there exists a primary existence. So Rabbi Sachs said, the Russia thinks Yesod ha-Yesodos v'Chachmas Leida sheisham, me is the primary existence, is me. I am the one who is in independent existence. Everything depends on me. So like the notion that you came from a putrid drop that was this close to spoiling, like that is the opposite extreme of this feeling that I'm a self-made person and like I'm intrinsically entitled to my own existence. Okay, I have another point on Vanessa's thing, but let me call on Ayala and Yael first. Yeah, Ayala.
I was gonna, I feel like this idea is very much of like, so therefore, if you're already spending a lot of effort, like it sounds like kind of like in Mishlei terms, like addressing the Russia more, who's like putting a lot of effort into like either physicality or like I don't know, harming other people and stuff. Yeah. But based on the Mishnah, it seems more to me, maybe this is just like my disposition. I don't know if this is actually like the Mishnah, but it seems like it's like more of against like not laziness, but like not sinning, like as opposed to like this is like specifically like if you're gonna put a lot of effort into doing something bad, instead put effort into good, as opposed to like if you were gonna just sin because like you're just gonna give into your desires because like that's the easier thing to do, then here's it. So
this is interesting. Also, this also answers another question of the Abravanel, which I didn't raise, which is and one thing about the Abravanel. Okay, just to get the record straight, I love the Abravanel. Okay, like he is an astonishing commentary. He asks really good questions and gives really good answers, but he also sometimes asks questions that I don't think are very good. So this is one of the questions that I don't think it's very good. Okay, but he answers it, and it's going to tie to what you're saying. He says, like this. So when he says think about three things that you won't come to Avera, lama lo hikpid levakish dvarim asher ba'adam yavu levakish mitzvos kim al harchakas Avera bilvad. Why doesn't he list things that cause you to seek mitzvos and not just distance yourself from Averos? V'hinei hashlemus hu b'kinyan v'lo b'hedar. Perfection comes from acquisition, not just from abstention. V'im heyos she'itztarach adam lezakik nafsho rishona. And it's true a person needs to purify his soul first. Hinei lo yaspik elav im lo yitzaref lezeh hakshot. That's not going to be enough unless he joins it with like straightening himself out. Ukamamar hamashor, like David says, sur me'ra v'aseh tov, right? Go away from bad and do good. And the only thing Akavia talks about is avoiding avera, you know? So I don't think that's a good question, because like, if you ask Akavia, like, why aren't you talking about doing mitzvos? He's like, that's not what I was talking about. You know, like it's like, you know, let's say like, you know, the Rav of the shul gives a beautiful Dvar Torah on Avas Hashem, and you go up to him and you're like, that's nice, but like, why didn't you talk about Torah Lishma or like Yiras Hashem? And he's like, that's not what the subject was, you know? But I think, you know, the way the Sforno is learning it, he is answering this question, which is that the way to avoid the avera is to show that it's not the best investment. You know, you're better off investing in something that's going to last forever. Okay. And the thing is like, if if the soul didn't last forever, then I don't think his argument would work. Then I think you would YOLO it, you know? So I think it only works because there is an alternative and it's a better investment. You know, if there weren't an alternative, or if it was equal investment, then I don't think his thing would work. Does that answer your question, or am I missing your question?
Not really. I kind of am stuck on the point of like investment.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's assuming that someone is already investing a lot of energy into something. And like, maybe this is just like me putting my ideas onto averas, but like the way or like being nitpicky about the term, but I took it as like, in a like being like a specific transgression, and this is trying to like hold you back from that, instead of like redirecting your energy. But it's not like you're like working really hard at this avera, like you're trying to eat the cheeseburger. It's more of like giving.
Okay, so I do think that that's an important point, is that the way the Sforno seems to be learning it is not, it's not addressing. Okay, this is actually a very important point. Okay, is when we were asking our questions about the cheeseburger, we were or at least I was picturing the guy with the cheeseburger going, and then like Akavia swoops in, like the little Akavia on his shoulder, and says, remember 3 things, you know, and it stops him. I'm now thinking that that's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about like what you're doing with your life, you know, and living a life that is like valuing the avera pursuits, and really the same pursuits like the Rambam and the others we're talking about, like Taiva, you know, Gaiva, and like, you know, Kinyan Olam Hazeh, and like it's keeping you away from that preemptively, you know, like the technical term would be, hold on a second, I'm going to get it in a second. This is not, it's not, the term, I'm not saying this to be joking, the term is prophylactic, right? It prevents the thing ahead of time, not like, it's not stepping in to like save you from the grips of the avera, you know? And in that sense, I do think that people are invested. A person is invested in like, you know, well, hold on. Gotta get my, this is water, right? And for those of you who don't know, this is water. This is one of the, you know, the top things to read, right? So like he says, like, you know, so he says, hold on. So he's talking about, this is David Foster Wallace, and I'll just read this part. So he says, in the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC or Allah, be it Yudke Vavke or the Wiccan Mother Goddess or the Four Noble Truths or some infrangible set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. You will never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally plant you. Okay, so in other words, that type of everybody worships, I'm saying everybody is invested in certain values, and those values by default will trend towards avera, because avera is going to be the easiest avenues to get them, and is going to have the greatest fantasies tied to it, you know. So that's really what this is trying to stem. It's trying to stem like channeling your energies away from the world that leads you to particular averos into the world of mitzvos and the nefesh. All right, Yael.
Yes, my thought was that seems like Sforno was introducing something else that none of the Mefarshim did, was that he's interpreting like the last part of the Mishnah, like the you'll be judged, need to give a reckoning, to mean that you need to develop your intellect, which is like, and use the word seicha, which is not something at all that the other ones mentioned.
Yeah.
And wasn't what I was actually thinking that it meant, because I was thinking more in terms of like, you need to develop yourself morally or ethically. Yeah. And maybe it's just the wrong way that I think about what seichel means, but I think of that more in like it could be a secular develop your intellect, or just not necessarily connected to ethics.
Okay. That's a good question, which I don't know. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. I'm going to try. Okay. Okay. There was a point that I was going to make based on what Vanessa said, which I think will address what you're saying. Okay. Rivki, are you going to remember what you're going to say? Because I kind of like want to say this now. So I'm going to say this, and it's possible, Yael, that I'm totally missing like what was bothering you about this. But we'll see what happens. Okay. So Vanessa was talking about how in the Sforno's way, the first two clauses work together and are really needed in order to really like get the point of the third clause. So let me ask you a question. Okay. And I think the answer to this question will like unlock the final step of the Sforno. Okay. He says, the beginning and end of your physical component is something perishable and disgusting. Okay, therefore it is not proper to exert tremendous effort in its affairs. So I understand perishable, right? You came from a putrid drop that was almost going to be non-existent. Oh, sorry, let me back up. Before that, at one point you didn't exist. Then the putrid drop thing happened, almost didn't work out. Then it worked, and then you existed, and you go on, and you're going to die, and then rot. So I understand perishable. Okay, why emphasize disgusting? Right? He's not taking the clinical approach of the Bartenura. He's taking what we noticed, which was like this negative, way of depicting like a disgusting drop and worms, dirt, and maggots. So why emphasize the disgusting thing? Yeah, Vanessa?
Couldn't unmute myself for a second. Maybe in a way, a lot of our like drive for a Verut is like, does it really matter? Like, what am I, a god? I'm not a god. I'm not like this special person. I'm just like this guy.
Yeah.
Like, what's eating a cheeseburger gonna do? Like, I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. Like, obviously Moshe Rabbeinu can't have a cheeseburger, but like me, Joe Schmo, like, why not? I didn't think this super through, but like maybe that's the angle of like, you have to like remember like we are coming from a small place.
Okay,
like that. Like,
I think you could say. I actually think you said a better answer earlier, which I'll quote in a moment.
Go ahead.
I didn't realize. So I was thinking that because when you think of something perishable, you think of meat, like you brought up the maggots and stuff like that. When you leave it out for too long, and also it's like the Bartenura who said like the sperm is only good for 3 days. When you leave it out for too long, it can get disgusting and gross and turn into something that you don't want anymore. It's just expired and no longer useful.
Right. Okay, but the question is though, why do we need that point in order to be affected by this Mishnah? Wouldn't it be enough to just say that the body is perishable? And therefore, like, if you have a choice between investing in something that is going to like evaporate in 5 minutes, or that's going to last forever. Let's say you're an artist, right? You're gonna, I know that like certain types of art like are only in time, like music only exists in time. Okay, whatever. But like, let's say you're a painter, right? And you're gonna, let's say you're here's the example, classic example, right? Is like, are you going to make, if you're a talented sculptor, okay, are you going to make a sculpture that's going to last forever? Or are you going to make a sculpture like a sandcastle, like right on the waves, and it's just going to get washed away, right? You're going to want something that's going to like last forever. So why like disgusting, Alex?
Well, I'd make the argument that most humans, whether we like it or not, are pretty vain. We don't want to be disgusted. We don't want to live life uncomfortably.
Yeah.
So to be reminded of like how uncomfortable and disgusting all these things are, you're further pushing someone towards something that's less disgusting, which is like, ideally like learning like making yourself better. That way you're not succumbing to disgust.
Okay, so I was going to read something else from Rambam and that supports that. Okay, yeah, but is that okay? So you're saying that it is just a further incentive to go to the thing that is like more noble or like less disgusting, right? Okay, I'm going to take a different answer, and I think I'm quoting you, Vanessa, from earlier tonight, which is that I think the point of this and the point of the whole first two clauses is to drive home one message: you are not your body. Okay, it's trying to break identification with your body. Okay, now we identify with our body because, first of all, when we first came into the world, that's all we were. We had not developed the intellectual part yet, right? That's what Chazal say, that the Yetzer Hara, that was Marcus Aurelius and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Well, okay, some people say it's Marcus Aurelius. Antoninus and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi had the debate about when the Yetzer Hara enters into the person. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said, the Yetzer Hara enters into you when the fetus is in the womb, okay? And then Marcus Aurelius, or whoever Antoninus was, said, no, it enters into you after you emerge from the womb, because if it was in the womb, then every fetus would just kick its way out of the mother prematurely. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said, yep, you're right. And the proof of it is in Beraishit, it says, Lepesa chatas rovates, that Yetzer Hara crouches at the opening of the womb. So based on that, Chazal say the Yetzer Hara has a 13-year head start on the Yetzer Hara Tov, or in the case of women, a 12-year head start. That you have your Yetzer Hara from the time you're born, but your Yetzer Hara Tov, your intellect, only comes online at around the age of bar mitzvah. Like that's when you develop your intellect before, but it only becomes like able to make real decisions and determine the direction of your life at your bar mitzvah. Okay, so you start off identifying with your body as me. But what this is trying to do is it's trying to break your identification with your body, saying that, first of all, don't feel like an intrinsic existence. Your beginning was like the slimmest of chances and you could have died, okay? And you will die, okay? You will not last. And you're going to be disgusting. Now, let's go with Dina's meat analogy. If you like find something in the back of the fridge and you open it up and you find it's like a rotting piece of meat or whatever, you recoil. And this is trying to get you to recoil from your own body, right? From the notion of your own body. And the reason for that, and to realize I am not my body. And that's when you have the move that Vanessa, you were making now, which is that the real me is the neshama, right? Is the seichel, right? But the point is that you can't just identify with the seichel unless you break identification with the body. Like it's too strong. The body's going to exert influence, and you also like you. Okay, I don't know if it's because the identification with the body and its forces are too strong, and like if you remain identified with the body, then you'll be drawn back into its traps. Or maybe the issue is that you can't identify as both. Like you have to identify as either the essence of me is my body, or the essence of me is my chelek hasichli, and so that's why the two first clauses are necessary and that's why it needs to emphasize it's perishable and it's disgusting, to break you away from it. And like, to use a disgusting analogy, like if let's say you have that artist who's like making the sandcastle like on the by the ocean, so he might be like, okay, I'm fine with temporary existences, it's good while it lasts. Okay, but then let's say you tell him, let's say you say, oh, by the way, that sand that you think you're playing with, it's not sand, it's feces. Right? You're making sandcastles out of feces on the shore. She's gonna be like, like that's the reaction that is trying to like get out of you about like your own body and like breaking identification with your body. Okay. And that's, I think and then you can like realize like, okay, the real part of me is the soul. This is the only part of me that can actually benefit and harm. This is the only worthwhile investment. And this is the only thing that God cares about, who's going to determine the ultimate fate that I have. Okay. Now, I totally forgot your question, Yael. Ask your question again, and I'll see what I thought was the connection of this to that, and you tell me if I'm addressing it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if what I said before was a comment or a question, but I guess my question now would be, is seichel different than like developing midot and more like moral decision making? And why would he say that it's about the seichel and not that?
Yeah, okay, good question. So I'm going to give you the short answer based on the reason why I paused when you first asked the question is I don't know Sforno's take on ethics well enough to know this. I can answer based on the Rambam. Okay, the Rambam towards the end of the More Nevuchim, I think it's the second to the last chapter. Hold on. Yeah, it is in the last chapter. Says that there are 4 perfections, and he says, I'll just read it really quickly because it's important. It's hard to not read it when someone says it perfectly. So he says, the ancient and modern philosophers have shown that man can acquire 4 types of perfection. Another word, if you prefer, is excellences, okay, not perfections, because you can't actually perfect these. The first kind, the lowest, which most people spend most of their days trying to acquire, is perfection of material possessions. The possession of money, garments, furniture, servants, land, and the like. The possession of the title of a great king also belongs to this class. There's no close actual connection between this possession and its possessor at all. It is a totally circumstantial relationship, and most of the pleasure derived from it is totally imaginary. And by that, I mean that I'm referring to when a person says, this is my house, this is my servant, this is my money, these are my hosts and armies. From when he examines himself, he will find that all of these things are external, their qualities are entirely independent of their possessor. When, therefore, that relation ceases, he who has been a great king may one morning find that there is no difference between him and the lowest person, and yet no change has taken place in the things which were ascribed to him. The philosophers have shown that he whose sole aim is in all his exertions and endeavors is the possession of this kind of perfection only seeks perfectly imaginary and transient things. Even if these remain his property all his lifetime, they do not give him any perfection. You know what? I'm not going to read the thing. It's going to be too long. Let me just summarize. So perfection of possessions is the lowest level because it's not actually connected to you and you don't actually own it. Or sorry, it's not part of you, and it can totally go be destroyed and you'll still be there. Higher level perfection is perfection of your body, right? Physical strength, health, beauty. That is part of you, but it's the secondary part of you and something you have in common with animals. Third perfection is perfection of ethics, of midos, okay, which does belong to you in a greater way because that is something that is like uniquely human. Only human beings can shape their own midos. Okay, animals can have midos, like you can have an obedient dog or like a respectful chicken, but only human beings can like shape their midos. But it's not the essence of you. It still is in the body and the psyche, because the emotions are part of your body. And also, the Rambam makes the argument that it's only a means to an end. The only reason why we care about midos is because midos are essential for you to perfect your intellect and to create a society where people can perfect their intellects. And then the highest perfection is perfection of intellect, which is the essence of the human being, which is the Tselem Elokim. And as a result of the perfection of the intellect, you will behave ethically, and ethical behavior is something which is actually part of your Tselem Elokim. Okay, and it's a weird distinction that perfection of midos is part of your animalistic side. You're being a good animal, essentially, okay? But then when you have perfection of seichel, the highest level is not just where you know stuff, but where you have knowledge of God and emulate his actions, which is resulting in ethical behavior, okay? But it's ethical behavior stemming from your knowledge, not stemming from your ethical dispositions. Ethical dispositions are like critical for that. You need to like train your midos in a way that is good in order to be able to perfect your intellect to get to the point where your knowledge results in good midos. That's like the Rambam's position. The reason why I'm doubting Sforno, and I'll just direct you here without going through it because this is a whole nother shiur, is the Sforno on in Beraishis on Nase Adam B'Tzelmenu Kid Musenu is that's Yechezkel. In Beraishis Perek Aleph, Nase Adam B'Tzelmenu Kid Musenu says that the Tselem Elokim refers to the intellect. So B'Tzelmenu shu etzem nitzchi v'sichli. So Tzelmenu is an essence which is eternal and rational. Okay, and Kidmusenu, like our likeness, is binin hama'asios, is in actions. Sheyadame bam k'tzas lepamaya shamala, that in actions we are somewhat similar to the angels, because they act with knowledge and recognition. And so what I'm not sure about in the Sforno is like how much he holds that ethics is tied to your animalistic part and how much is tied to your exercise of the demus Elohim, which is part of like what makes you uniquely human. Yeah. So the answer is I don't know, but yeah. Okay, Rivki, do you still remember what you're going to say? You've been waiting so long and so patiently.
Yes. So it was just like a very minor question. So
Okay.
I was like, just like, it's fine.
Sure.
But yeah, I was just wondering, I know there's also another mishnah somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's a mishnah, which says specifically like you should learn when you're young because like when you're older, blah, 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 X, Y, and Z, like it's really better to learn Torah and all these things when you're younger. So I was wondering, just because we were speaking about how we're always supposed to be improving our intellect and focusing more on our intellect than our body, like how do those two mishnayot pair?
Right. So that is in Avos 5 in chapter 5. So right now it is September 15th, 2022. So if we do one mishnah every week, we're going to get, no, the answer is I have to learn that mishnah. Okay. So let me make one more minor point and let's summarize it and bring it home. Okay. Even though we didn't fully answer the Rambam and the other guys. Okay. So, so the minor point is like this, is in the alternate version of the Mishnah, I think we find something interesting. Where does he come from? A dark place. And where is he going to a place of dark and deep darkness? So to me, that's emphasizing the fact that that your existence is finite. Okay. And it's just bookending both of the finitudes. Okay. That's what Sforno called nifsad, right? You came from non-existence and you're going to non-existence bodily. Okay. What will you become? You will become dirt, worms, and maggots. So I do think there's an interesting thing of like, you will be eaten by dirt, worms, and maggots has this feeling of like, get them off me. We're like, you know, like it's disgusting and you want to like distance yourself from that. You will become dirt, worms, and maggots is like the body that I identify as myself is not really self. It's just a part of the material world, you know? And that part of the material world, you know, like those of you who had my Eov shiur, like that's the circle of life in the Lion King, right? It's like, you know, material goes through different transformations. And like right now, this material is your body, you know? What we said, the example I gave is like you eat an apple, right? The apple is made out of matter, which is in the form of apple. And when you eat it and you metabolize it, literally the apple becomes your, you know, proteins, fats, and stuff. It becomes your body. And so too, when your body dies, your body will become dirt, worms and maggots, right? So that's what we call the disgusting thing, but it's taking like a circle of life route, not a like ew disgusting route. And then the judge is the King of Kings. Okay, so let's try to just summarize by Sforno by answering our three questions. Okay, so how does the contemplation of these three things prevent you from sinning? And does it only work if you contemplate all three in conjunction with each other? So the answer is, yeah, you have to contemplate all three. And the way it works is that when you recognize that there are two parts of the human organism, the physical and the non-physical, the intellectual, and you realize that the physical is not you, is transient, barely came into existence and is going to go out of existence and then will be eaten by worms and not last, you will recoil and break identification with that as the real me and not invest yourself in pursuits that just augment that disgusting transient body, you know, and you'll still enjoy pleasures and stuff, but not if it compromises the real thing that you can actually have an impact on, which is eternal, which does get judged by God, which is the real self, which is the eternal part of you, right? And the way that this has a practical effect, and this is the part which I'm sure we can still develop. So we talked about how like realizing that this is just, you know, you don't, okay, if you can think of many examples of this, right? You know, if you've ever done like a project, let's say like for school or something, you put in tons of work and then it's just over and that's it. Like it feels kind of like a letdown, right? Like that's it. And like, you're never going to go back to it again. And think about if you just didn't even get a grade for it, right? And think about if like it was just this like thing that just was just disgusting to be involved with, you know, it's just not a good investment, you know. So it's emotionally distancing you from that whole endeavor, and then getting you appealing to the Mishleic like pros and cons part and saying like, no, you can invest in something that's lasting and that will actually improve you and that you'll be judged on in eternity. And again, actual Mishlei tells you why that's going to benefit you in Olam Hazeh, but this is saying in the grander, this is aimed at a higher level audience. It's talking about for Olam Haba. And this is not stopping you when you're about to eat the cheeseburger. This is stopping you in terms of like when you're making decisions about what you're doing with your life, which hopefully we should all be thinking about at this time during Elul, right? Like what am I, what am I spending the bulk of my day doing? Like what am I involved? Where does my energy go? Like what is my energy involved in? Am I just pouring? Am I just like stocking up more mass for the worms to feast on, and to for me to like flush my body down the toilet, or am I like investing in something like real, yeah, Ayala?
Just to add, I think this is a little bit of a separate point, but I don't know. So maybe instead of just like separating between like your mind and your body, this is also meant to like detach you from your circumstances, in the sense that like I think we just see ourselves as like necessarily like who we are and like in the circumstances we are and with all the good things we have. But like if you think about it like this way, it's like you could have been a future job, you could have been nothing. Like there's so many circumstances outside your control, and then at the end of the day, like because like you can't take credit for any of those, and then the only thing you do have control over is like what you, I guess, like your mind or whatever, like the second half of it, and like who you're going to be judged before, and like the decisions you make with it.
It is interesting, by the way, that it is putting the emphasis on your on you being in the driver's seat, but not on Hashem's role in any of this, right? Except for the judgment part. In other words, it doesn't say, I think someone made me point this out last time. It doesn't say know that God is the one who created you, right? And that God is the one who's going to be, like die on Ha'emes, like God's going to be the one who is the cause of death, right? And God will judge you. It's almost like omitting God from the picture of where you came from, and just emphasizing the fact that you didn't come from yourself. Like you did not, you're not Paro who made himself. You came from like the odds were small and whatever, and you're going to this place, and then God's going to judge you. But the spotlight is on what are you doing and how much control do you actually have.
Also, I think like it's like more of like a call to action as opposed to just like going from the wrong way. I was saying like we take it for granted, or like, yeah, I guess like we take it for granted of where we are and that it'll continue going this way. Yeah. But like that is also circumstantial. And like if you're not living in line with reality and living in line with Hashem, then it like, yes, it happens to be working out well and like for now, but like eventually you will die, and nothing that you had before was actually like because of you. So like everything could vanish in a moment unless you're attached to this real truth. Yeah,
that's good. That's a good way to put it. And I think that point is emphasized more starkly by the other Mefarshim who talk about like the kinyanim, right, and the gaiva, which is like as great as you think you are in this world, boom, you're going to be equal to everyone else when you or you were equal to everyone else in your non-existence, and you're not going to be able to take anything with you when you die. Like, yeah. Okay, so we I think we at least got an approach from the Sforno. There's a lot more to work with, and I still want to think more about how to make this more practical. Like we didn't answer the question about like how does the mistake, like when are we supposed to think about this? There's more to think about. Okay, but so if you have any other thoughts, feel free to share them with me. I would not. I know people don't like to have like tons of WhatsApp groups. I would not be opposed to making a like we for our Mishlei Monday Night Mishlei shiur, we have a like Mishlei after party, to like discuss stuff throughout the week. I would not be opposed if someone wants to like create a group for us to discuss stuff in Pirkei Avos, and just make me an admin or whatever. I'm not going to impose it on people though, because I know people are like reluctant to be in WhatsApp groups. So whatever. But yeah, I guess that's it for this week. And next week will be Jesse Fishbein's shiur. The week after, Bli Neder, then I will be giving shiur, and then we'll be on break until after the Sukkos. Okay. Alrighty. Thanks for coming. This is a fun, good learning. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good Shabbos.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Shalom.
Bye.